Hey there, Prof T here. This week, we're talking about the basics of large language models. I want to talk to you about the basics of LLMs or generative AI. I'll use those terms interchangeably today. Uh, I want to talk about how I think they can be used to enhance our learning. I believe there is a way to use generative AI, to use these tools to enhance this learning flywheel so that you learn more, faster, and better than you have before. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Before we talk about that, before I give you the details and specifics and my recommended tips, we got to talk a little bit about how these large language models, how these generative AI tools work, mostly. Now, for those of you that know that my background is not in tech, but I always like to say I'm a product of the Nintendo generation, and there's no consumer technology on the market that I haven't figured out how to hack. And one of my superpowers, one of the reasons why I'm here, is because I think I'm pretty good at explaining things in simple terms that most people can understand. So this definition you see here is about as technical as we're going to get today. I asked one of the chatbots, Perplexity specifically, how they work. And the most key piece that they came back with was this: LLMs represent words as multidimensional vectors or embeddings and use a self attention mechanism to capture relationships and dependency between words in a sequence. LLMs then predict the next word or fill in missing words in sentences, generating coherent and contextually relevant text one token at a time. Now, that's a really complex way of saying that they don't think, they don't reason. These bots, they guess. And they're really good guessers. The math behind the probability models that these bots use are way over my head. And while I study this and learn as much as I can, it is way less than I've liked. And I can barely grasp all of the technical capabilities that have all the technical reasoning and brilliance that have gone into these models that continue to produce new emergent behaviors, new things and skills that even the top scientists did not expect. But the truth about it is, the reality is that they don't think, they don't reason, they guess. They don't know answers. They are using probability to predict what the next most likely outcome is. That's what their outputs are. It is a prediction, word by word or token by token, of what is likely the next best word. That's the weakness that they have. There are many, many strengths to this model. They're always on, they're always running, they are relatively cheap, they're always available. They are so flexible in how you can use them and the inputs they will take, but they do have their weaknesses, namely that they don't know the answers. They don't reason through problems. They're not actually thinking about the entire corpus of human knowledge that they have access to. No, they are using probability to guess what is likely the next word, token by token, to address your outcome. In knowing the weaknesses of these LLMs, we can leverage that for our strengths to get the best out of these bots. Okay, we're going to dive a little deeper into how this works. What I mean when I say they're guessing at their output, they're generating this one word at a time. Here's basically what happens when you put information into a chatbot. And to think of this example, I want you to think about the well-known English panagram: the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. If you were to type into a chatbot, the quick brown fox, and ask it to fill in the remainder of this sentence, it would start by taking all of its training data, which is essentially all of the written word of all of humanity. It would take your prompt, the information you, the user, provided it, asking it to fill in the blanks in this sentence. It would take that information and create a probability distribution, basically a selection of the best guesses for answering your question. In this case, a selection of the best guesses as to what the next word is after fox in the quick brown fox. 5% maybe. And then once it has all of those words, it would apply weighting to it. It would say, what's the probability that this is the next best word? This is most likely the next word to come after fox. 5% flies, 15% swims, 45% runs, 80% jumps. These are all estimations. These are all, me just making it up. But that's basically what's happening. It's creating a probability distribution of the next most likely word, assigning a weight to it, and then depending on the bot's temperature settings, essentially the dial between more and less random in their responses, it will choose based on its own self attention mechanism and the context that you have provided, it'll choose what word to enter next. If it is tuned to less random to have a more accurate response, it will likely choose jumps. But because these are stochastic systems, because they are built to have a bit of randomness in them, regardless of their temperature settings, you can never be 100% sure that it will always give you the same answer, that it's always going to say the quick brown fox jumps. Sometimes it'll give you words that are unexpected, words that may seem random, but that still fit within that probability distribution. We know that weakness and we can leverage it for strength. We do that by providing more context and using the LLM's output as our next input. They don't think, they guess. So, in order to improve their guesses, we provide more context. The more context we give them, the more that we tell them about what the problem is, what we're trying to understand, what the output, how we want the output, the more focus they will have. They'll be able to focus their attention on the specific areas of human knowledge that they have access to. They'll be able to use improved probability to make better guesses as to the information you want based on the context you provide. We also want to make sure that we are doing the thinking because these bots don't think. So, whatever output they give us, we want to use that for our next input to improve our next version. Maybe that's going deeper in the reading and improving our understanding of the material. Maybe that's getting and editing a document and improving our next edition of that document. Maybe that's helping us think through new ideas and ask better questions so that our next question is a better one. But we never want to use the chatbot's output verbatim. We don't want to copy paste that information because they don't think, they're just guessing. Because there is randomness to it, if we're not paying attention to and checking that output, we may be getting answers that we don't actually want, don't actually agree with, or are incorrect. By adding context and using the bot's output as our next input, we can leverage their weaknesses to strengthen our work. Why does this matter? Coming back to the learning flywheel here. Like I said, AI can enhance our learning and our skills when we use it the right way, when we are the ones that are doing the work. I have seen this myself and I've seen this in others. You're interested in a topic, you have some reading material on it, but maybe you don't have anyone that has the same interests as you. Ask the AI chatbot to do some research for it. Ask them questions about the topics, questions that you have about your reading. Have a conversation with the text that will help elucidate parts of it that you may never have understood before. You have ideas that you're learning, concepts that you're learning in school, maybe concepts that you're learning on the job that you don't fully understand. Here's a great trick. Ask the bot, explain this idea to me like a fifth grader. Ask the bot, tell the bot, here are the pieces I don't understand. What questions would you ask to help me better understand this? You're walking into your next meeting with a new team on a new topic. Tell the bot what the meeting's about in general. You don't want to share any confidential information, but then ask the bot, what questions should I ask? What materials should I research to better prepare myself for this meeting? Use the bots to help you think critically, help you do the thinking and improve your thinking for the next output. If you're working on a paper, you're working on your next assignment, you're working on your next report, you're working on an email to your leaders, to your team, feed a copy of that to the bot and ask it to edit that down. One of my AI gurus gave me 3 magic words that changed how I work with these bots. Focus on concision. Not only did it change the output I received from the bot, going from pages to paragraphs to sentences that were clear and specific, it also helped me change my writing as I asked the bot to review my writing and help me focus on concision and deliver a clear, consistent, concise message in everything I write. So, what's the next action? It's time to test this for yourself. Maybe you've never used Gen AI before. Maybe your prior experience has been lackluster. Hopefully, the knowledge I've shared with you today helps give you ideas on how to better work with these chatbots by understanding what their weaknesses are. Hopefully, you can leverage those into your strengths to enhance your learning, enhance the work that you do every day by using Gen AI. Here's a few ideas how to get started. The first one I call is bot versus bot. Open up two chatbots in two different windows and put them side by side on your screen and ask them the same simple question and watch them come back with different answers. Yeah, the content will mostly be the same, but you'll see that their word selection is different. You'll see the length of their answers may be different. You'll see an example of what it means when I say they're stochastic machines, that they have randomness inherent into how they make selections based on the probability of what the next most likely word is. Ask them that same question over and over and watch how every time you ask that question, they come back with a slightly different answer, and why it's important that you make sure you are reviewing those answers and using them as your input versus copying and pasting to be the final output. Low context versus high context. You could take that same example of that simple question and add more context to them. Tell them why you're asking that question. Tell them what you plan to do with the information you provide them. Tell them how you want the information, how you want the output to be structured. Maybe you want it in a table. Maybe you want it with 3 examples. Maybe you want them to explain it to you like you're a 5-year-old. Watch how adding more context changes the answers you receive and how it will improve or change what you can do with that information as your next input. And lastly, when you've done these experiments, take a step back and think, how will you use Gen AI to help you with what you're doing? Maybe you need some new ideas on a new project to start. Maybe you need some help doing some research on a project that you're working on. Maybe you are working on an assignment, working on a paper, working on a blog article, working on your next LinkedIn post, and you could use some help drafting or editing your script so that it's clear, that it's concise, that it's well organized and delivered. This is exactly how I prepare for these lectures that you see here. I usually take my phone, I start with a voice to text stream of consciousness, and then I feed that information to the LLM to help me organize it, help me clarify my message, help me deliver a clear and crisp message to everyone out there. You don't have to take my word for this. I know I'm pretty good, but there are way more qualified people out there for you to learn about Gen AI from. Here's a few that I follow that I think are doing great. Ethan Mollick, professor out of Wharton and AI researcher, he has been a leader. He continues to be a leader in the Gen AI space. Jeremy Utley out of Stanford, he has clear, actionable guidance for how to use AI to improve your productivity as well as your creativity. To my teachers and my students out there, I highly recommend those 2 resources for you. Nathaniel Whitmore has a podcast called the AI Daily Brief that goes, 7 days a week. He's giving you AI headlines as well as deep dives into industry topics, AI companies that are on the forefront, and technology on the bleeding edge coming out of this industry. Great podcast to follow. For a different side of different take on AI and technology, check out Ed Zintron and the Better Offline podcast. It is definitely PG-13, definitely a spicy take on the technology industry. But while I don't agree with everything the man says, he's asking some very, very good questions, and he's been doing it for a long time, and it's definitely worth a listen. And if you can't do any of that, then at least follow me for more information. You can always catch me here on LinkedIn as I do more and more of these posts. And I would appreciate it if you check out theproft.com, where I'm setting up something new. For those of you that know me, know I've done nothing like this before in my past. But I thought, but in this season of learning and experimenting, let's experiment with something new. I've set up my own simple website. There's more content to come, but you can go there today and join the class. Sign up, drop your email address, and be among the first to help me shape exactly what Prof T can become and what the Prof T community can be. Like the old proverb says, I'm going to need your help to go as far as we can. So join me here, join me on theproft.com, and let me know what I can do for you. As always, thank you for your time and thank you for your attention.